The Front Row Back Row podcast is a show where two grad school buddies discuss physical therapy entrepreneurship. I helped guide a company to an 8-figure exit, and I'm now starting my own mobile company. Brian grew his mobile practice to 4 clinics, and he's now doing $1 million in revenue. Join us as we help you grow your own business. Hello and welcome to the Front Row Back Row podcast. My name is Dr. Owen Campbell. I'm the owner of Simplify Motion Physical Therapy in Phoenix, Arizona. And with me, as always, is Dr. Brian Wolf. He is the owner of Evolution Physical Therapy. 4 clinics. Did I get that right? 4 clinics in Long Island and Connecticut.
5 now. 5 now. I
5
don't know if I
now.
told you that. Yeah, we just had a new one in Norwalk. So 5.
You did tell me, but I didn't know if there was an
It's all
announcement on the
good.
cards.
That seemed very, very much like organic that we just got to announce that we had another one.
Well, now you screwed it. So
Exactly.
All right. Well, today, the topic actually, one of the things that we got now that we're starting to get a little bit of traction in our school group and talking to other business owners, not just as fellow business owners, but as people that run the kind of mentorship program. I'm getting a few questions now, and I think a few of them have been really good that we should put onto the pod, mostly because, I mean, some of them are pretty good questions with pretty complex answers that you can't just answer in a text message or a Facebook post or anything. So I think today I want to talk about something a good friend of mine asked, and he was going through, he's starting to run paid ads. He is doing he's doing a reach out where he's offering like kind of a lower cost thing to get people into his clinic. And then obviously with the hope that that lower cost initial becomes a course of care, right? So that the patient will say, oh man, you seem nice, this place is cool, let's keep going, right? And it's kind of a tale as old as time, the first free visit. I've done it a lot, and I've talked about this a lot in my with my BNI group, all the way down to for charity, things like that. But it's a good tactic of getting someone at least in the door meeting you, and then it's up to you to be a good physical therapist and help them, right? So the biggest question though is we're running these ads, and he's running these ads and he's getting some people kind of clicking and saying, I'm interested. But how do you close when you're not in front of the person, right? So we are physical therapists. We are used to looking at people and saying, your shoulder is bad at reaching overhead. Here, look, try and grab this thing. And then they say, oh, that's obvious evidence that my shoulder isn't doing very well. Now you tell them an exercise, you do something manual therapy, they get better at doing the thing, bam, they want to work with you and get better, right? Well, how do you do that with an advertisement? How do you do that through? I mean, my strategy has kind of been the messaging apps, right? So I thought this would be a great question for you, Brian, because you've kind of built your business based on the social media reach out direct to consumer. I think one time you told me only like 10% or 5% of your business was referrals from physicians through insurance networks. So I think this would be a great conversation for you because you've probably seen the bad old days of Facebook network or marketing all the way up to kind of how automated you can get now. So I put this question to you first and foremost. How do I close on ads? Someone says, oh, I'd like more information. How do I close that person?
I think and we were talking about this a little bit before. The number one thing to do is just like you said, is to get in front of them, right?
Yeah.
Just like this. And so when there are lots of apps and things that you can do to get in front of somebody, we are currently on one, right? Where I think depending on I heard this story that I thought was really good. Depending on the higher ticket of the offer, the more important it is to get in front of the person. So if I'm asking somebody for, a couple $100, it might not be a big deal for me to close you over the phone. Right. And so I think the way that I look at it is if you think about anything from a perspective of, like, I want to have you pay me money for a service. The line that I always come up is we are Marshall, right? Is like, you didn't ask your wife to marry you via text or over the phone. The more in person that you are, the better it's going to be. And the more, because there are 3 things that you need to close this, right? They need to trust you. They need to trust the product that you're providing, and they need to trust that it's going to work for them, right?
Mhm.
It's all about trust. So if you're there in person talking to them and just explaining that to them, that's how it's sales. It's sales 101. You want to get in front of that person. That's the key.
Okay. So if I have a big ticket thing, which again makes sense. So I want to reach 100, I want to reach 1,000 people with my ability to treat the shoulder or the knee or the hip or whatever. Get it. I think what he's doing is a pretty good thing. He actually shared with me that he has a few people booked for this. So I said, you're doing pretty good. But I mean, would this be something where you'd say, okay, this is why PTs have booths at events, right? So that you can see 100 people and they can all talk to you. Um, is that where someone who maybe doesn't have the ability to get to 100 people do that, or is this where the power of like YouTube comes in, where you can have a 5-minute video that says, this is why I think I'm really good at treating the shoulder, this is why I'm a good therapist, and letting people using that long form as a way of getting to know you.
So I think that the answer to that is what happens with content and what happens when you are doing certain things like Instagram posts or YouTube videos or stuff like that. I think what you're doing in that scenario is you're creating more authority for what you do in the field, right?
Mhm.
So realize that if you do that, then that's what's ultimately going to do. I think the thing about the community events is like I heard this from somebody else who actually is in our space here that talked about this. He basically was like, your cardiologist wouldn't go to a community event, right? Just randomly,
Yeah.
right. So the thing is, we also have to think about those community events. You want to be very pointed by what you do in those scenarios because it does, I think, diminish some of your authority by doing that. I also think that I've just been to enough of these community events that I think what happens is you're branding. That's what people have to
Mhm.
think about. Like community events are branding. If you can get some leads that you can engage, that's awesome. So I'm not also saying that I haven't gotten community events where I haven't gotten leads. I think the bigger and piece, there's an old adage, the fortune's in the follow up, right? So if you think about like what do I do now that I have these leads? Like how do I follow up with them? Do I text them? Do I email them? Do I call them? Do I do something via face to face? Yes, all of the above, right? You do all of the above. You want to do all of the above because also the aspect of that person might communicate in a different medium. So say like I have landed people via text to come in,
Mhm.
but I think what's a really good if you're gonna charge north of on the first uptake over $500, you want to do a face to face thing.
Mhm.
You're going to have a much higher conversion rate in person and you're going to have a much higher conversion rate like this way, like face to face through Zoom, right?
Yeah.
So the less trustworthy the forum, the less likely you are to make a connection with the person, and therefore, like the more likely they are to say no. So there's a great app called Calendly. So
Mhm.
literally, it's an awesome app that I think anybody can put in there. It's literally just like calendar, but like it's a free app that essentially anybody can sign up for. And what you could do is you can literally I can send it to you. How many times have you ever had that app in your own, right? Somebody
Yeah.
emails you and says, hey, like schedule with me. And you're like,
Yeah.
okay. And then you click on the calendar and then you click the thing. That's what that is. It's that app. And it's free to get started.
Yeah.
It's not expensive. And so those are really sweet ways to do this for sure.
Okay. So for our practitioner, right, our solopreneur, cash based or cash slash Medicare insurance, whatever it is, based practitioner, maybe thinking about a Zoom call might be a good idea, right? Or a
Yes,
video call that maybe he doesn't have to drive to that person's house and knock on their door, which in today's day and age would be kind of creepy. Um, but he can have that back and forth conversation. I know, as you were talking about this, I've done a few things trying to get my website going and a little bit more optimized for search engines and stuff. And I've in my head, I feel like I've talked to the person in person, but it was a Zoom call to some lady in South Carolina, right? So I think it's interesting the psychology of it. Of you think about the conversation. Is it as good as talking to the person in person? No, but it's pretty close, right? So maybe on discovery calls or book that quote unquote book a discovery call should be a Zoom call. It shouldn't be a phone call.
totally.
And even if it's so, even if you come from Facebook, maybe having like a landing page on your website And then they fill that out saying, this is my name, this is my email, all of that. And then you can say, boom, here's my Calendly link, right? Schedule on my thing. I'll be there, and it's a Zoom call. So that's a pretty good. I think. I mean, I'm going to steal that, to be completely fair.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you should. I mean, because but it makes sense to you, right? Like, I think when
Mhm.
the pre-show we were talking about this, and you were like, "I've been texting them, and he was doing something else," and I was like, "Think about it, right?" And like, here's the thing: I think that a lot of physical therapists get. I don't say get wrong. They overhype in their head, right? I think
Mhm.
we are really good salespeople. Think
Yeah.
think about what we sell every day, and to those physical therapists that are like, we don't sell that, we just teach that. It's the same fucking thing, right? I mean, let's just be real, right? Right? It's the same thing. We're talking about apples and apples, or apples and oranges. They're both fruit. So when it comes to, if I'm selling you on, hey, Mr. So and so, I know you have knee pain. Let me show you how to do these exercises. Well, why do I have to do these exercises every single day? What you're selling is the product of physical therapy. So
Mhm.
when people tell me, oh, my patients never do their exercise at home, my head is, I'm like, either you're a bad therapist or you're a bad salesperson, right? It's one of the two
Mhm.
things. So, like, we are selling them the idea that these exercises are the medicine that will get them better. So
Mhm.
if you can sell exercise to people, let me tell you something, you can sell freaking anything, right? Like you know what I mean? Like the
They
only
sell
difference,
dieting, yeah.
yes. And when people are like, "Oh, that's not what this is," I'm like, "It's totally that." There's a
Yep.
interesting book by Grant Cardone. Grant Cardone
Mhm.
writes, "It's sell or be sold." It means you're either selling something or you're being sold something. So in that
Mhm.
scenario, it flipped my brain on that, right? So like think about that. Like if I'm selling, "Hey, these exercises will help to get you better," and the person's like, "Well, I'm not doing the exercises," they're selling to you, "I don't think I need to do the exercises."
Mhm.
That's what they're doing. So if you don't want to be in the sales conversation, I got news for you. You're in it. You're in it. You're just
Yeah.
you're just the one being sold. So
Mhm.
like for you, do you which do you like to prefer? So to flip back into that scenario, if I want to be in front of this person and get their business, I have to have a human interaction with them, right?
Mhm.
It's very rare that someone's going to spend like one of my favorite things that I would tell people for physical therapy is to sign physical therapy plan of care packages. So if do an initial evaluation and I found that the majority of people will take me up on these offers. If I walk up and I say I'm using you, Owen, as my example, as my patient. Hey, Owen, I know you have neck pain. It's going to take me about 10 visits to get that better. What I
Mhm.
do is it's about 150 for a visit. But what I do is if you want to pay visit by visit, that's fine. But I know it's going to take about 10 visits. So if you like, what I can do, if you want to pay for all 10 visits now, I'll give you a 10% discount.
Mhm.
Locks the person into their plan of care. And a lot of people like that. They're like, oh, like I basically get $100 off. Like if they got
Mhm.
1,400 bucks, like they'll do it. Right. Or,
Yeah.
you can work your way back wherever you want to do that. Like if some people are like, oh, I think it's gonna take me 8 visits or 6 visits or 12 visits, like you can be as 8 visits, not, whatever, like 9 visits.
Yeah.
You can work your way backwards from there, and then you can charge them that up front and you can give a discount that way.
Yeah.
Bonus points to whatever you want to actually charge. If you want to charge 150, you work backward and say, hey, I charge 165 and give 10% discount, right? Like there's a little bit of that too. So
Yeah.
it allows you to be flexible
Mhm.
on what you're doing. Along with the fact of like, again, I think that the more you can get to know people and the more you can create a relationship with people, the easier time you're going to have to sell and convert them. But
Okay.
that being said, on Facebook, we've talked about these metrics. On Facebook, it's called traffic. So realize if you're getting leads that are coming through, if you're converting out of 10 people that come through, at least one, you're doing great. So
Yeah.
realize that too. So sometimes people look at, oh, but I failed 9 times. Like, no, you convert. Like we talked about your golf thing, how that just
Mhm.
crushed, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes that does happen too, right?
Yeah.
I think in our industry, sometimes people need it. So it might be a
Mhm.
little bit higher, but I tell people if you're converting 10%, the mechanism's working. Keep putting money in it.
Well, and that's the nice thing about PT is that, for most of the people that come to us, they call it pain points in business, but I mean, we actually have
Yes.
people in physical pain. So there's a lot of motivation for the patient to come in. A lot of it is just building trust. And I spoke with another friend, a colleague of mine, and he was talking to me. He's gone about 3 years now. He's almost a full year or year and a half, 2 years out of me, right? And he was saying the biggest thing I've learned is that we are selling trust
Yes.
because people know they need it. Doctors tell them they need it. There's no one out there that says physical therapy doesn't work, right? Um, or at least no one en masse saying it doesn't work. And usually they're talking about a busy clinic, right? Um, and he's saying my biggest thing is I'm just developing trust everywhere I can. So when I started looking at sales as developing trust as opposed to what my customer acquisition costs and all that stuff was, it was weird in the beginning, but it's paying dividends now. He's hiring his next employee, his first employee. So those are some things that I think how you frame it mentally is big. And then the nuts and bolts of how do you get someone to click on your ad, say, "Ooh, I like that," right? And
Yeah.
then get it to a in-person or trust building conversation as fast as possible, right? And I think that in the meta ads, there is a section in there, right, where you can just push them to a landing page, right? Or push them to like a contact us form. Is that how I know you do it
Yeah.
with Evolution?
Yeah, so essentially what we do is there's right. So when people come through, so there's different types of ads, right? So you
Yeah.
so you have different types of ads. So we have two different types of ads that we're currently running, and we consider them two different market strategies. At least I do. So one is the storm market strategy, which is
Hmm.
like engagement and traffic. And so what
Hmm.
that does is you're creating engagement and traffic towards your website where you have a lead magnet, like a landing page, and then they
Hmm.
sign up for it, and then you can contact them via email, right? So what that means is, sorry, and I misspoke the way I said that. Basically, the ad is it's driving traffic to the website, right?
Okay.
There's a landing page on the website. Person fills out their information, says, "Hey, I want to be contacted." They're raising their hand saying they have a problem. Then you are calling them through that email. So you're getting the email from your website. And so that's a really easy way to do it. The other way to do it is to do what's called lead center engagement, which is basically like that's what we talked about in that one in our school thing, right? Our school video, which was we set up it through a lead center. Essentially, you can use a third party app like a Go High Level or something along those lines, or you can use Facebook Meta. The advantage is speed to lead is key. Realize that the faster that's the number one metric. If someone signs up on your website or signs up, the faster you get to them, the more
Hmm.
heightened their emotion is. The, like you know what I mean? They're crescendoed at the right time. So they're
Yeah.
like, I want to use this service. I'm going to click on this thing.
Hmm.
After that, their day goes, and so it just kind of like goes from there. So the
Yeah,
faster you can get
that buyer's remorse.
exactly right. So
Mhm,
essentially, what you're doing is you're saying, hey, here's information. Like, come book a call with me, right? We'll talk a free discovery call, something along those lines.
mhm,
And so what we can do is we can set up a time that we can actually get them to book. And so that's where you can get the lead center basically to go into like the basically they can go into the scheduler. They can
mhm,
schedule with you. And from that schedule, what ultimately happens is now you're going to contact them as many times as you can to try and
mhm.
actually get them on your schedule, or they'll schedule automatically, and then you just got to call them to confirm it, and that's it.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I think those are the nuts and bolts that obviously you can pay somebody to tell you all that, right? But I think that a lot of that, like you mentioned, it's free this, free that, and really it comes down to even if you have, a high price website and a lead service and all this other stuff, if you can't hire five people to do it for you, you're going to be the one who has to
yeah,
get on it. And even if you can hire five people, you got to make sure they're getting on it, right?
yes,
So I think that's kind of useful information that maybe somebody either bootstrapping right now, like say in my situation where I just started my company, so I don't have that sort of around me, right? Um, you know, basic contact page, and then make sure all my notifications are on. If somebody emails me, contact form comes through, boom, that's what I'm doing. My wife knows that, watch the kids for 2 minutes. I'm sending out an email, right? Um, all the way down to what you're doing where you've been able to automate it a little bit more, so that you just pick up the ball after about the first three steps have been done, and then maybe you have 100 cold leads, 50 that are kind of warm, and then you close. Of that 50, it's your job to close. So I think you can scale this, when you need to, but you can't scale something that isn't working, so you got to start with the basics.
yeah. I think a great way to look at this too is think about when you're doing this is from a standpoint of when do you offload some of this stuff too. So if I'm starting off and I'm a solo, so say I'm you, right, solo.
Yep.
I start with knowing the advertising, right, and how the advertising works. And then ultimately, I'm in charge of lead nurture, which is what it is, right? Calling the person, cold calling the person, like warming the lead up. I'm in charge of scheduling them, and I'm in charge of closing the sale, right?
Mhm.
So in this case, the number one thing that you're doing all the work, the first thing that you would probably offload is the lead nurturing stuff, right? And
Mhm.
so you can do that with a virtual assistant at a pretty inexpensive thing, but realize that like you're gonna get like it's not gonna be as good as you are, right? Like
Yeah.
no one's gonna care about your business more than you are. So
Mhm.
the more that you think about that process and understand that, like having a virtual assistant is super helpful. But I understood that I was going to take the hit on some of that as well.
Yeah.
So it's not a huge deal. We've tried multiple different ways to do it, and it's just never as good as if you do it yourself. But
Mhm.
you're also going to get 25 hours of your life back.
Yeah.
So you can film podcasts like this, and so there's other things to do. So there's more. I think there's something to be said for. I think the biggest thing to think about for most people is to work on their sales skills, right?
Yep.
Because if you can work on your sales skills and the ability to talk to people and the ability to close people, I'll tell you this, I don't mean get to the point where it's like I think they're going to close, right? I
Mhm.
mean like there is money in hand. That is when
Yeah.
you've closed it. So I think a lot of you're lead nurturing ever since. So like I have somebody who just told me that she was like, I'm interested in signing my kids up for speed training. And I was like, no problem. Right. Like, she's like, let me talk to my husband and then we'll kind of figure it out. Blah, blah. She had the pricing for me. In my head,
Mhm.
I'm like, that's in my head to lead nurture the hell out of that person. Like, I
Yeah.
need to go back and follow. It's not their job to follow up with me, it's my job to follow up with them. And
Yep.
that's where the real, like, the quote unquote fortunes of the follow up is the more you can follow up with them and the more you can get on top of them, right? In terms of like calling them and getting face to face interactions, the
Mhm.
higher success rate you will have in closing those sales.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, I
want to
can already
stack
think
the chips,
I can already think about 2 or 3 calls I need to make just after this conversation. So,
right? And so if
yeah.
you think about that, for those people who are interested in what school does, like that's what's awesome. Like Owen is our ultimate test here, right? Like think about that, Owen. So let me ask you this: if you close one, like what's like, and let's, I'm gonna do this to Owen.
Yep.
Obviously, we know these things are private, but like this is real money that we're talking about, right? Like
Yeah.
if you close one of those three people, how much is the average that you're probably gonna get on that
Well, you can go
total?
based on everyone knows my pricing because it's on the website. So
Yeah.
150 for a private session, right?
Yep.
And if the average PT course of care is 10 sessions, maybe less with cash pay, so 8. So somewhere around 1200, right?
Yeah.
My one episode averaged somewhere around like 1000 to $1200.
Yeah. So I mean that's that, and most cash based PTs tell me that's about the number, right? About 1,000 to 1,200 bucks. So
Mhm.
if we round it down to 1,000, then this conversation just yielded Owen potentially $1,000 to $3,000. That's
Yeah.
what our school group is. What we're trying to do with our school group. That's exactly what
Yeah.
we're trying to do is do Q&As like this where we can help you do that too. So there's my
And
plug.
And it was a good plug. So and we'll end on that. So on
Yeah.
in the description in the YouTube video and in the podcast, we have the link to the school group. It is now the Physio Growth Mentorship because we have a new fancy name now. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them in the comments on all your favorite apps that you lead us to. Please 5-star reviews; those would be fantastic as well. Brian, I'm out, man.
Sounds good, man. Thanks, brother.
All right, see ya. Everyone, have a
All
good day.
right. See ya.